I'm Louise and I'm the Twinkl Geography product owner for the primary geography product. I work with a wonderful team of wonderful geography team with a love of geography learning. They have lots of teaching experience at Key Stage 1 and 2 in a range of settings, and we just generally love to help those who teach geography. So in today's session, we're really going to be focusing, first of all, on a few exciting updates from the team. And then our focus for today is going to be thinking about reading across the curriculum in geography. And we're going to look at why reading across the curriculum is important, ways to use reading in geography. And then we're going to have a little look at Twinkl Originals, which Pete and Emma are here to talk us through a bit more about, and how that can support your geography teaching, and then how books can support diverse geography teaching as well. So lots of focus on reading today. So some of our exciting updates then. So coming soon, this is one to look out for in the next couple of months, and it's something that our team are working incredibly hard on at the moment, and we're really excited to be able to share it with you. So Geo Wanderers is going to be our brand new streamlined progressive geography scheme for Key Stage 1 and 2. The first units coming are for Key Stage 1, United Kingdom, Lower Key Stage 2, Volcanoes and Earthquakes, and Upper Key Stage 2, Food Distribution and Climate. And we're at that stage where we would really love teachers to test or give their opinions on the units. So when you fill in the feedback form, then please indicate on there if you would be happy for me to contact you by email, because it would be lovely to get some feedback on these to make them the best for you that we possibly can. To tell you a little bit more about it, our plan is to make it streamlined so that each year group will have 3 units of 6 lessons each, so that you can fit it into a busy curriculum. We're carefully planning the progression to develop and build on the concepts, thinking about building up the disciplinary, substantive and procedural skills and knowledge as children move up through the school. It's rooted in retrieval practice with built-in retrieval activities. We've got remember tasks in every lesson to help bring back that learning from either earlier in the unit or from previous units. We've also got retrieval tasks that are built in, and a carefully planned spiral to really help children be able to know more and remember more. We're also working hard to build in progression in place, revisiting and developing understanding of places so that we can revisit those places from different lenses and really develop that depth of place through our curriculum as well. It's also very flexible, giving your teachers the autonomy to choose activities from the activity menu. So you can see here on the left, we've got an idea of what that will look like. And you can see here we've got a writing opportunity, an exploration opportunity, hands-on opportunity, and a research opportunity. These are at very early stages here, but you can see that an idea of what that might be like so that you could choose which opportunity best suits your class. We're also making our resources editable so that they're easy for you guys to adapt as much as you need to. They're also going to include both embedded field work in each unit, those small practice activities that are really helpful for building up those skills over time, but also full field work units where we're really going to go through that field work cycle and practice those skills of questioning, planning, collecting data, analysing that data and so on. There's also a full pack of assessment materials, which will include a show what you know task and a show what you know assessment, and the various other bits and pieces in there for retrieval as well. And also accessibility suggestions within the planning to help you adapt for additional needs. We've also got the whole thing supported by our collection of CPD videos, and which is going to continue to grow to work alongside the scheme. And it will also be supported by other fantastic Twinkl products. It will be featuring our wonderful characters, Yasmin and Claude, who star in our animations. We'll have those linked animations as well, linked concept videos, linked songs, and our wonderful inclusion team are going to be creating some adaptive teaching packs that will sit alongside our units as well to help you adapt for those children with additional needs or who may not be working at age related. Another new thing we have for you is our visual snapshot videos. So these are short snapshot videos to support the scheme units, and they're designed to give a really short visual impression of a place or a process that can then be built upon through other activities. So I wouldn't suggest that you'd use these on their own. They'd be used as part of your other learning so that you're still looking at those places or processes through a variety of lenses, but these can give you that real visual take of things to really engage the children. And these are already on site, and so far we have these for countries of the United Kingdom and capital cities of the United Kingdom. So, and we'll have lots of others following coming with our other units as well. We also have a brand new animation on site at the moment. So we now have 2 fun and interesting geography animations, which feature our wonderful characters, Yasmin and Claude the Cloud. And our brand new one on site is the rainforest animation, where Yasmin and Claude travel through the different layers of the rainforest, identifying changes and meeting many different creatures. And in the water cycle animation, which has been on site for a while, Yasmin and Claude explored the different stages of the water cycle. And coming next will be our United Kingdom animation, which will sit alongside our United Kingdom unit. So lots of exciting new things there. So moving on from our exciting updates, our focus for today is thinking about reading across the curriculum in geography. So I'm going to start off by thinking about why reading across the curriculum is important. And I've got this lovely quote here from the reading framework, that the whole curriculum matters in developing pupils' reading comprehension, because good comprehension depends on knowing a lot. So as a geography subject leader, you've got your part to play in those children developing their reading comprehension as well. And it shares the studies that show good levels of knowledge across the curriculum can actually have a really significant impact on that reading comprehension. And that the use of diverse text can also really enhance geographical understanding. So it's back and forth. It's not just that geography has a part to play in helping reading, but also reading has a part to play in helping geography, because it can really enhance that geographical understanding in terms of the understanding of geographical language, which will help children's ability to think geographically by reflecting and drawing conclusions from information, really helping them to think like a geographer. And reading also gives children access to a wide range of geographical information, which enables them to access it in their lessons and be able to use inquiry skills and draw on different types of data using their reading skills in many different ways. And this all comes under the idea of disciplinary literacy, which emphasises that literacy skills are both general and subject specific. And that as part of geography, we have those subject specific skills of teaching children how to communicate, read and write like a geographer. And in order to do this, offering a real range of strong reading material as part of our curriculum is really key. So the knowledge being taught, another lovely quote here, the knowledge being taught, however, should always be the core purpose of the lesson. And we say this a lot with geography, don't we? There's lots of links we can make with other subjects, but it's really important that that core aim of your lesson is geography focused rather than reading focused. And so whilst reading across the curriculum is important, we must do this in such a way that we don't put all the focus on that and lose our geographical purpose and learning. So it's aiming to enhance geography with reading and provide opportunities to extend vocabulary knowledge and expose children to quality texts. So there are some real key techniques that you can use to do this. So bringing elements of reading culture into other subjects can involve quite simple techniques. These might be as simple as things like discussing if a text is fiction or non-fiction, or exploring the vocabulary that children are unlikely to know, or explaining how to break down new words that they might find tricky in texts. You also might choose to use some whole class strategies, such as paired talk about the reading, discussion, choral reading, echo reading, to ensure understanding of the text. And I'll talk about those a little bit more in a moment, because these can really help develop that geographical understanding. And these strategies can also really help with making the reading material that bit more accessible to children of all abilities. So echo reading is a technique where the adult reads a short section of text aloud, modelling the reading, and children follow along in their own copy. And then the children repeat or echo the section of the text aloud, following along in the book. Now, this can be a really good strategy to really help children be able to understand that geographical vocabulary, to be able to model that understanding of it, to be able to stop after a short section and explore the vocabulary or any words, or explore that comprehension a little bit further. So it can be a really nice whole class way of making sure that that text is really accessible and making sure that understanding of the geographical information is really strong. Another way of doing this is choral reading, and this is very similar, but first the adult reads a section of the text aloud, modelling the reading, rhythm and flow, and the children follow along in their own copy. And then the second time, the children read along with the teacher in unison, following the same pace. And this strategy is really helpful to build fluency and confidence in reading. That again, it gives you that opportunity to be able to explore the text bit by bit and make sure that the understanding of it is strong as you go along for all children in your class. Another key technique is providing some information in text form as part of geography lessons. So, information presented by the teacher in the lesson is one way of learning, but providing information text, whether these might be non-fiction books, atlases, fact files, maps, can really help children to engage with a topic and take in more information. And that asking those key questions around this can really help to pull out the depth in the information. And I'll talk a little bit more about questioning as a technique in a moment. But using these different texts can be a really good way of building independence in children's learning in geography, in getting them used to engaging with different kinds of sources and thinking about the validity of those sources as well. So another really good technique for geography is to really think about reading information in other ways. So reading skills are often called upon and supported by disciplinary skills in geography. So when we think like a geographer, we are analysing information that might be visual information, such as a map, auditory information, such as information provided from videos or by speaking to people, or it could be written information in the form of an atlas or a fact file or a book. And all that information they're analysing and having to draw conclusions from if they really want to think like a geographer. So being able to read information in other ways is really important as well. And so in learning to think like a geographer, they need to develop those comprehension skills of looking beyond the obvious, of inferring that information from the pictures, the videos, and the written materials that we offer to them. So it's important that we really think about making sure that these texts we offer are at the right reading level for the children, and that we're thinking about making these accessible using some of those other techniques, but asking key questions about these and thinking about how they can infer information, possibly from a picture about a place, thinking about how they can infer that information by asking different questions. What is the picture not showing us? And is a good question that you can ask. Or thinking around a written material, thinking about where that source comes from. Is this a reliable source? Are all the people in this news article that we're reading giving the same opinion, or are there different opinions here? What conclusions can we draw from their opinions? All of that kind of questioning will really help you to develop those think like a geographer skills, those disciplinary skills that we want to develop in our geographers. So we've talked about this a little bit already, but analysing the validity of information is another really important thing. We do this a lot in English and history, and think about whether a source is a really good source to be using and where it's come from. And this is really important to do in geography as well. Really think about where our secondary data has come from. Is it a valid source? Has it come from a good place? Or is there some bias to be aware of? Are the people who have been interviewed for this article, will they have a particular opinion for that reason? Are they biased in a particular way? Or is there a balance presented in the news article that we're reading? Are there maybe things in that the photographs we're looking at aren't showing us about this place? Are they very much presenting the tourist view of a place rather than showing us some of the other sides and other lenses? So really getting them to question those sources and think about what might be behind them is another really good technique with reading to use in geography. So using questions is another really interesting technique. So thinking about when you provide the questions to them. So think about the skills that you want them to use. Sometimes by providing children with questions before they read a text, it can allow them to skim read and search for information. But sometimes we want them to actually take in the whole text first. So then holding back the questions until later can really help to ensure that happens. And by varying those tasks, you can get them to use those different reading skills and think about the different ways that you want them to take in information. Are you wanting them to hunt for the answers and answer questions, or are you wanting them to really get a full picture of that text before they then apply it and think like a geographer about it? So using those two different ways can be a really good way of thinking about using those reading skills to enhance their geography. So I'd really like to know what reading techniques you've found helpful in geography lessons. So if you've got any that have really worked for you, then please do drop these into the chat, because we'd love to know what works for you really well in your lessons as well, and to share in that collaborative way. For me, I think about a lesson I did with a matching activity when teaching climate zones, where children were reading short bits of information about the climate zone and matching those up in the class. And so they were reading those short bits of information and then having to apply the comprehension of that to decide which climate zone that would match to. So if you do have any lovely ideas, please do drop them into the chat. So we're now going to think a little bit about how Twinkl Originals can support your geography teaching. So I'm going to hand over to Pete and Emma here so they can tell you a little bit more about Twinkl Originals, and then we'll explore some of the books. So I'll hand over to you for a bit, Pete.
Thanks, Louise. Hi, everyone. So I'm Pete. I'm joined as well by my colleague, Emma. We're POs on Twinkl Originals. To start off, a little bit of an overview of Originals for anyone who's not familiar. So we write and publish and create books, which are all available with a core membership. All can be found as ebooks on site. And we've got quite a large library. It's ranging from picture books for very young readers. There's a range of picture books for under threes. There's picture books for then early years and Key Stage 1 or the equivalent age ranges. And then we go all the way up to readers age 7 to 11. So we've got some novels and longer stories and a few picture books as well for that age range. We've also got a poetry collection, and we're developing a few new lines, such as leap into chapters. So we've got a lot of books, and they're very varied. So one thing we're always looking to do is to tell engaging individual stories, to include a lot of diversity and really try to open up and broaden the range of the stories we're telling. And as a result, quite a few have got geography links. You can find them all on site. So as I mentioned, they're all available as ebooks, and every book is also accompanied with a large range of supporting resources. And our team is made of teachers. So our editors and writers are all teachers, as well as being editors and writers. And we've also got a big team of illustrators and designers. So our books are really high quality. They look nice. They're fun stories that we always get really nice feedback and on. So what I thought I'd do is just go through a few. Oh, sorry, yes, I missed the app, of course. So as well as the ebook, we've got Twinkl Originals app, and all titles are available on that app. And again, it's free for anyone with a core membership. So you can download that app, and on there you've got every Twinkl Originals ebook. There, if your school has a school subscription, you also have the opportunity to get learner logins, so your children can all have a login that they can use at home. Now that's a Twinkl wide thing that allows you access to many different Twinkl apps, of which Originals is one. But it's very handy and a helpful thing to have, because it means children can access the books back home or in class, and you can use them in school and the supporting activities on there. Fab. So very central to what we do on Originals is the reading framework, the curriculum, and ideas around reading, pedagogy, and things like that. One thing we always look to do is tell the story. Like with any books that children enjoy, it starts with an engaging story in an engaging world with characters that the children are going to enjoy reading about. We also try, being teachers and coming from the educational side of things, we're looking to build in everything that we think schools and educators want and need from a book: vocabulary development, opportunities to tell diverse stories, opportunities for discussion and debate, and that sort of thing. So every title we create has got that sort of built into it from day one. It's very much part of our process to make sure the books have got that in. And like I've said it, and Louise mentioned, it's all very close to the reading framework, very close to the curriculum in what we're trying to provide as part of our output. How that links to geography then. So as I mentioned, our books are wide ranging, lots of subjects. but some tends more towards geography for reasons we'll have a quick look at in a minute. One thing is that we do try to incorporate a lot into each book. So even if I don't quite look at the book, I don't go through a book in depth now, have a look at the library and see what you can find in there, because even books that perhaps have got a slightly different focus have still got quite a lot that you could draw from for geography discussion and teaching. But starting with Sabrina and the River Spirit. So this is an original story for children aged what would be Key Stage 2, so 7 to 11. It's one of our older stories, and it's the aim of this story is to tell a story about the dangers of water pollution, sustainability, some things like that. It's a fun one. It's fantastical. So there's elements of magic to it. Our main character Sabrina, she discovers a water spirit. But the key sort of central premise to the book is as a community who lives on the river. So it's not in the book, it's never mentioned where this community is. It's purposefully just a generic sort of riverside community with industry and things that rely on the river. And in the book, the character goes on a journey. I won't spoil it with plot spoilers, but character goes on a journey to understand, what it means to live by a river, what a river is, the features of a river, the way it's part of civilization and society. So sorry, if I just have the next slide, please. It's the same slide again. On the next slide. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So when the river becomes dry, the town begins to struggle. Sabrina discovers it's her who has to help with the river, and on that, it's a lovely kind of hook and introduction to a river topic. As I said at the beginning, it's a chance for children to come across and be introduced to these concepts and ideas like pollution, drought, sustainability, but also further ideas such as population, overpopulation, poverty, things like that, and the way these many different elements are often at play, again framed through a accessible story for the children.
Thanks very much, Pete. So I'll talk through a few ideas of ways that you could use Sabrina and the River Spirit in geography lessons. I think we might have a slight delay on the slides going across, so sorry for that. So this book can be a really great hook into a river topic. It's got beautiful illustrations and really interesting characters, and it can really help you explore rivers through many different lenses, such as pollution, drought, sustainability, environmentalism, overpopulation, and poverty. So it's got lots of different themes running through it, which can help link to lots of different geography learning. So one way that you could use the book is you have these lovely illustrations of rivers, and identifying different river features is a great way to use this. So using that first full page illustration to help you identify features of rivers, and I would then compare that back to your most local river, use it with a picture or a visit to that local river and see what you can compare about the features. Have you got all the same features in your local river, or is the journey slightly different of the river that you're looking at? So that would be a really nice way to use it. I'd think about identifying the different human and physical features they could see along that river as well. Obviously, if we look at the illustration from the book, we can see all sorts of factories and things like that, but we can also see lots of commercial use in the boats. This might be very different for a river near you, and so it'd be quite interesting to compare those different human features and the physical features that they can see as well, and draw those out from the illustrations. Another really nice way to use this book is to really think about the theme of the importance of rivers. In the story, the river is important to many different people in the community in many different ways. And you could use that to link into identifying the way that your local river or a famous river are important both personally, economically, or culturally. An interesting one to maybe look at would be something like the River Ganges, because you could look at how it has such cultural and religious significance to people. But you could also look at more locally than that and think about collecting data on why local people feel the river is important and find out what their opinions are. That would be a really nice way to carry out some field work and collect that data and think about how people feel about that river around them. So another really interesting theme that comes through the story is the idea of pollution and environmental activism. So throughout the story, Sabrina gets really frustrated by people who won't listen to her concerns. And this offers a really wonderful starting point for talking to children about how they feel about the environment and to offer hope and protect against that eco-anxiety. It also could give a really good hook into children being able to carry out their own activism project for a local issue that they could find. There's obviously a huge amount in the news about river pollution at the moment, so that can be a really nice link into looking at that in local news articles and thinking around how you could look at pollution in rivers and really explore their feelings around that and the sort of environmental activism that they could take part in to kind of give them hope in that situation. I'd also say a little warning there, due to the mystical and spiritual elements of the book, it is really important to ensure that children don't have any misconceptions around blame. In the book, the community really anger the spirits, and that brings the flood. So I think it's really important to explore that with children and make sure that they understand that people in communities that are experiencing disaster should not be blamed. It also creates a really interesting discussion point to explore how we all have responsibility for the environment and that need to play a part within our community. But children may also have anger about river pollution or other environmental issues. And so it's really important that we listen to that and that we harness it into hope rather than hope and that action, and think about what they can do rather than harnessing that despair and anger. So thinking about how they can really use that and how they can drive that into hope and moving things forward. So I'd love to know how you might use this book in your class. So if you've got any ideas of how you think you would use it, please do drop them into the chat. I think for me, I would really explore the illustrations and think about embedding that river vocabulary, looking at the journey of the river in the story and the features, and comparing that back to a local river, and maybe using it to introduce some field work around river pollution. I think that's one way that I think I would really like to use it in a class. So moving on, Pete's now going to introduce you to Rainforest Calling.
Yeah, so this is another one aimed at 7 to 11, children aged 7 to 11. It's set in the Amazon rainforest. The fun little hook on this one is that the main character, it's written as a diary entry. So the main character is a child at school watching some webcams that have been set up in the Amazon rainforest. And then that's sort of allows the children and the readers to experience another form of storytelling. So from a story and book point of view, it's something that's a little bit different to the straightforward narrative. And obviously there's elements there that do feed quite nicely into geography, because the main character is making observations and then writing their thoughts down in the diary. The fun little magic-y twist here is there's 2 point of view characters. So we've got the child watching the webcams, and then we've got Pedro the patoo bird, who actually lives in the rainforest, who has spotted the camera and doesn't know what to make of it. So again, there's a bit of a fun, fantastical side to it, in that Pedro's watching and worrying about the presence of the webcams. The broader look of the story, very much Amazon rainforest, so it's dealing with sustainability and deforestation, a lot of those sort of more serious areas and themes that do lend for quite a lot of discussion. It is very full of we did sort of go out our way to really make sure that a lot of information was on there about the Amazon rainforest, the forest layers and things like that. At which point, if I hand over to you, Louise, you'll have much more of a deeper insight into that.
Thanks very much, Pete. So again, I'm going to talk you through a few classroom ideas for geography. So I think this would be a really great introduction to a rainforest or South America or Brazil topic. It is really a geographical vocabulary rich book. So it's ideal for introducing those key terms for your unit. And there are such a load of lovely supporting resources as well that children could work together to create a vocabulary display using some of the lovely resources that sit alongside the book. I'd also think this could be used in a really great way to think about what the Amazon rainforest in particular is like. The book explores the Amazon rainforest through these lovely illustrations, but also through lots of different facts and lots of different opinions that come through the diary. So you could compare those illustrations to images of the Amazon and think about the similarities or differences that they can pick up on. And really have a look at those and think about, can they see similar animals? What can they notice about the differences between the trees that they can see in the illustration? What was the illustrator trying to depict here? And what were they trying to show about the Amazon? So that could be a really nice way into that topic as well. And it can be an interesting route also into discussing those sources. So thinking about, again, what the authors were trying to show about the rainforest in the illustration and whether those photographs tell a different story to the picture. Are there illustrations that tell quite a happy story, and are there maybe comparing the images of some of the themes, like there are images to do with deforestation in the book? If you look at photographs of that, can they see different stories that are being told by those, or is it very much the same one? So it can be a nice way of comparing and really helping to draw out those elements that you can see in these visual images. I'd also have a think about what stories does the book not tell. So the book explores the Amazon rainforest very much for a wildlife and environment lens and thinks about the impact on wildlife and the environment. But there are lots of stories that are not told by this book. So those are things that you could delve into after reading the book. So these might be the human stories of the different people living there. So we've got a lovely photograph here of an Indigenous community. So you could look into a particular community and see what are their stories and maybe what are the trade stories, looking at some of the different fairly traded stories and resources that you could use for that, or the businesses that rely on the rainforest, and think about how that impact contrasts with the difficulties of deforestation, and that it's not all that one-sided look at it. So those can be really nice lenses that the book can draw into by looking at the stories that the book doesn't tell. You could also use that to look at the rural setting of the book. So the book is very much set deep within the rainforest, looking through these webcams and looking at these different views. And so it would be great to contrast that with the Brazilian rainforest city of Manaus. You could also look at activism and solutions and explore the other side of deforestation. So rather than this looking at this kind of sad side of it that's happening to the animals, having a look at the hope side of it. So what is in place to protect the Amazon, and what solutions can they find out about that are actually working really well to protect the Amazon rainforest? This could also be used really well for field work. So in the book, as Pete explained, Daisy uses webcams to explore. And in many ways, she's carrying out her own virtual field work there. She's finding out all about this place and asking questions about it and analysing the data that she sees. And this is something that you could absolutely do with children as well, using webcams or pre-recorded videos to explore areas of the Amazon. As always, do be careful with webcams, because you can find that obviously anything can appear on them. So you do need to be supervising and be ready to turn off, but can be a really good route into seeing that kind of live data of a place as well, and sort of being able to observe a faraway place almost as a primary source. And that through that, you could also compare these areas to a local forest and think about the differences between what they see on the webcams on the other side of the world in different rainforests, but also a lot of local forests will have webcams these days, and thinking about the differences that they see in those as well. So it can be great for some virtual field work there too. Obviously, another big theme of the book is deforestation, and the book explores the impact of deforestation on animals, in particular in the Amazon. And this emotional topic is a really great way into exploring the wider impact of deforestation and looking at things like biodiversity loss, release of greenhouse gases, reduced carbon storage, pollution, and also the destruction of personally and culturally important places. This can be a really sort of a real way in thinking about the feelings and the impact on those animals, and then being able to take that wider to look at the impact on the humans and the people around, but also on the environment and on the world as a whole. So that can be a really nice way in through this book, and introduces it in a slightly less scary way, I think, as well. So again, I'd be really interested to see how you would use this book in the classroom. So if you've got any lovely ideas for this book, please drop them in. I think I would really think about using it as an introduction to some virtual field work and to introduce validity of different sources, and thinking about deforestation and using a variety of secondary sources to make sure that we were getting a full picture of that through different lenses. So I think that would be a way I would try and use the book in class. I'm going to hand back over to Pete, and he's going to tell you a bit about Around the World with Max and Lemon.
Thanks, Louise. So yeah, as mentioned, our books, we've got cover quite a wide age range, and this is one for younger readers. My colleague Emma is in, who is the product owner for these. So Emma, do jump in if you feel I've missed anything. Yeah, so Around the World with Max and Lemon is a picture book aimed for younger children, and it's a fun, fantastic adventure. We've got Max, the main character, who's on the cover on the scooter there, and in the book, Max is looking for someone across the world who is like her teddy Lemon, and the conceit of the story is she travels around the globe. She goes to look for someone like Lemon, and finds out that actually Lemon's unique. But on the way, as she visits all the continents, or the countries, or the areas of the world, she realizes it's not quite so simple. Yes, we're unique, but there's a lot we've all got in common as well. So it's a lot of those very core sort of ideas for the younger children, and again a lot there to sort of spark discussion. And as with all our picture books, a lot of what you can get from these books comes from the beautiful illustrations, really in depth and really rich with potential discussion. I'll pass back to Louise, who can hopefully add a little more from geography perspective.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Pete. So I think with this one, it's such a lovely book with going to so many different places that it's really great for thinking about that compare and contrast. The Key Stage 1 curriculum asks us to study a contrasting place, but it is really vital that in doing that children consider the similarities and the parallels with their own lives and not just the differences. And this book is a really great introduction to that, because as Pete mentioned, that Max is regularly spotting similarities to her own life on the travels, and thinking about how things are similar but not the same. And I think that's a really nice theme that runs through the book that could be used to really get Key Stage 1 children to think in the same way, rather than always considering how different things are. They could really think about how they're similar but not the same. And that would be a really nice way to do that for a contrasting place. I think this book's a brilliant one as well for exploring the continents and oceans. It's got a lovely map page in there with some lovely illustrations, and you can see the different places that she visits on her journeys. And they could locate these different places that Max visits and identify the continent that they're part of, and look at mapping out the journey and thinking about the ways they might travel across the oceans. Maybe using compass points to think about which directions they'd need to travel in, which oceans they need to travel across, what they might see. So there's an awful lot you could do around Max's journey there as well. You could also use it to explore a small area of these places in more detail as a contrasting place, and compare it a bit more to your local area. So it'd be really nice to use it as a hook if you're wanting to explore a small place and you're not sure where to choose. You could choose one of the small places from the book and use that to help you. This book's also really lovely to be able to use to explore hot and cold places around the world. So children could explore the weather and climate of the locations mentioned in the book, and look at how close they are to the equator, and think about predicting whether they're likely to be hot or cold places from that. And then looking at the illustrations to see, are there any clues in the clothing or the environment that would tell them if they're right. If we look at these lovely illustrations we've got on here, we can see there's some real good contrast there in terms of the weather and the clothing and the types of housing and things that you might be seeing there. So that's really great for getting them to think about the differences between those hot and cold places, and thinking about where they might be on the map. It's also really strong for vocabulary, this book. It showcases so much human and physical geography. And so the illustrations are ideal for introducing or reinforcing that key stage 1 geographical vocabulary and second tier vocabulary. So you could explore a small area of these places in more detail and compare that, thinking about that different vocabulary, thinking about the human and physical geography you can see in your local area, and thinking about what you can see in the illustrations. It can be a really nice way into making that comparison. It also has information there about the animals as well, which is quite a nice thing to compare. So I'd love to know how you would use this book in your classes. So if you've got any lovely ideas or you've used it before, then please do let us know. I think I would really think about using it to explore the hot and cold places. I think it'd be really nice to look at that map of the places that Max goes to and really think about that location and get the children making those predictions. I think that would be a really nice way to use it. So I'm going to hand back over to Pete now to look at our last originals book today, The Runaway Iceberg.
Thanks, Louise. So yeah, this is the last one. Is another picture book for the younger readers, and it's a fun adventure story that follows two penguins, Rossi and Gaspar, and they obviously live at the South Pole, and unfortunately the ice that they're standing on breaks away and starts to drift off, and as it does, it starts to melt, and they have to dig deep and find some bravery that they need in order to get back to the mainland. And yeah, during the story, it's obviously fun and exciting story for children. We get to meet a lot of the animals that live in the ocean around the South Pole, and explores a lot to do with the polar regions. With Antarctica. There's quite a lot of rich illustrations and opportunities to study that area of the world. I'm sure that he's got a little bit more to add for that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Pete. So some classroom ideas for the Runaway Iceberg. It's obviously really good for thinking about exploring the geography of Antarctica. The lovely illustrations are a great way to introduce the physical geography of Antarctica and also to spot the lack of human geography. You can really see that in these illustrations, those kind of bare expanses of space, and comparing those with photos of Antarctica to identify that there are human features, but these are very few compared to other continents. And you see we've got this lovely sorting resource that you can use to help you with that as well, sorting those human and physical features of Antarctica. This book is also really based around the Antarctic animals and really introduces a range of them. And so it's ideal to really think about finding out those differences between polar animals. And so doing things like a polar regions animal sorting to really make sure that children understand the differences between the ones you will find at the North and South Pole and the ones that you'll find in the Arctic or Antarctic. So you could also use it as part of learning about continents and oceans to discover which continents and oceans different animals live either on or nearby. And again, we've got this lovely sorting activity that can help you with that as well, where children can find out where those different animals might be in terms of the continent or the ocean. Again, I think this book is another really lovely one for hot and cold areas because it can really introduce that hook into thinking about a cold area of the world and then being able to identify where the story takes place on a climate map and using that to spot differences in the climate between the setting of this book and books set in hotter areas such as the Max and Lemon one we looked at earlier as well, and being able to think about comparing that back to their own lives as well so that they can spot those differences between their local area and the sort of weather and climate they might experience there too. It's also a really lovely low anxiety way to introduce climate change and the melting polar ice and some of the effects that might have on animals. Being a Key Stage 1 book, it's got this happy ending of the story. So that really helps to reduce that anxiety and introduce it in a more friendly, hopeful way. So it's a really nice way to do that with Key Stage 1. So again, I'd love to know how you might use this book in class. So please do drop that into the chat if you've got some ideas for that. I think for me, again, I would think about using it to explore the hot and cold areas, to reinforce the continents. But I think the biggest way I'd use it would be to really reinforce that difference between the human and physical features and really help them understand what Antarctica is like as a place compared to the other continents. So I think that would be a really nice way to do that. And I'm just going to hand back to Pete for a moment so he can talk you through a few more in the range of books that you might be able to explore to help you with your geography learning.
Yeah, so just finally, as mentioned, there's a lot in our library, and we've just looked at a few of them here, but a lot of books we've got do have other sorts of geography links, so it's worth exploring them all. It's quite easy to look through the picture books. Ebooks you can easily be downloaded and flicked through. For the longer books, each one comes with some adult guidance, so you can just download sort of a 2-page PDF that gives you a very brief overview of the story, so that you don't have to read through the whole novel. We also have books, the Originals Explorer range, which is aimed at much younger children. I believe 0 to 3, but Emma will correct me. Yeah, and there's quite a lot of geography in there. So, for example, Let's Visit London. You can see just there on the right-hand side. Let's Take the Train. Very much designed to introduce children to the first steps within geography concepts there. So yeah, have a look, investigate what we've got, and I'm sure there'll be something in there to help. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Pete. So just to finish off today, we're just going to think a little bit about using books to support diverse geography teaching. You've heard a lot about how originals can be used in that way. And so I just wanted to talk about that a little bit more generally, thinking about how books can really create a unique window into other worlds and other perspectives, and that they can really help introduce concepts and themes in interesting ways that can really make your geography curriculum engaging. Books can also be used to introduce children to those difficult or sensitive concepts in accessible ways, or to pique children's interest in key geographical topics. But I would also add in that it's important that books are taught in context. We don't want to rely on a book to teach us about a place, because they can give a one-sided view of a place. So we do need to be mindful of balancing that with viewing places through other lenses and other sources too, and making sure that we're not just viewing the view of one author, but thinking about the different ways that place can be represented in different sources, through videos, through discussions, through news articles, all sorts of different ways that we can use to introduce those different lenses. And just to finish off today, the geography team are going to share with you a few different books that they find particularly useful in their geography teaching. So Kate is one of our Twinkl geography content writers, a very experienced teacher, and she recommends A River by Mark Martin. And she says it's a stunning picture book about a girl who observes a river outside her window and imagines where it might go. It's a great book to use as a stimulus when teaching about rivers, as it sparks discussion on the journey of a river, looking at different landscapes as well as creative writing. There is so much detail to look at in every picture on every page. We haven't suggested a particular key stage for any of these books, because even sort of some of the books that are aimed at younger children can be really good to use with older children as well. But I think this book is really great for introducing human and physical geography and really building that enthusiasm about physical geography, as it really helps you fall in love with rivers. So it's a lovely, lovely book, this one, definitely worth checking out. Nicola is one of our Twinkl geography content editors, and she recommends Old Enough to Save the Planet by Lol Kirby. And she says this is a gorgeously illustrated book that tells the stories of 12 children from across the world fighting to save the planet from the very real threat of climate change. It makes children believe that they can make a difference and that they are old enough to save the planet that they are about to inherit. So this would be a wonderful book to use on Earth Day as well, to really help children feel that they can make a difference and to really get that hope and that activism side of them going. So that's a really, really lovely book to work in those ways and to work alongside your field work and get them to really think about how they can make a difference. So Mike is another one of our Twinkl geography content editors, and he really recommends Here We Are by Oliver Jeffers, which I've definitely used myself lots of times. And it's a beautifully illustrated book which guides the reader from space down to planet Earth, and then on a tour around the planet showing diverse landscapes and people. And he says he used it when they returned to school after lockdown, and it really inspired the children to think about themselves and their place on the planet. He says his copy is now very tattered and very well used by the children. And I do think it's such a lovely book to really help children think about the connections between local, national, global and beyond. So another really lovely one to add to your collection. Sophie is also one of our Twinkl Geography content writers, and she recommends Window by Jeannie Baker, and lots of Jeannie Baker books are amazing to use in geography, particularly being picture books that you can really use them across such a wide age range because they don't have the words. And she said, and that's what she says, that this book is a great resource across different year groups with having no words, and it illustrates the changing view of a window over a period of time and watch a child grow up alongside it. And it's a great resource for conversations around the changing environment and the impact that humans can have on the environment. So it can be a really great hook that into field work and looking at how your local environments are changing as well. Jane is also one of our Twinkl Geography content writers and a very experienced teacher, and she recommends If the World Were a Village by David J. Smith and Sheila Armstrong. And she explains that this book explains facts about the world's population in such a clear way by representing the world as a village, and that there's so much to look at and think about regarding the diversity of the world and the distribution of resources. And it can really help children understand the maths of geography and make links between geography and maths and understand things like population data by seeing it so clearly represented in those illustrations. So that's another really lovely one. And then finally, my recommendation, I love The Street Beneath My Feet by Charlotte Gilliam. And this book really brings the layers of the earth alive. It has incredible fold-out illustrations that bring together human elements, wildlife, physical processes. And it's amazing to use in all sorts of topics because it has information about earth layers, natural resources, different types of rock, and really helps bring together those elements of geography and science. So that would be my recommendation to use it in a geography lesson as well. So I'd love to know which books you would recommend for geography lessons. So if there are any that you think would be amazing to use or that you've used in your geography lessons that you'd like to recommend, please do drop them into the chat so that everybody else can see those as well. And I'd just like to say thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really lovely to talk you through the different originals books and the ways that you can use reading in geography. And I really hope this has been useful to you.